I'm looking here at the Associated Press, where a lot of people get their news. A lot of news channeled through the Associated Press. Listen to how they describe this. What began with a drone attack on a top Iranian general rippled outward until dozens of Iranian Canadians and dozens of Iranian students studying in Canada were dead. As Iran and U.S. take step back from the brink, Canada grieves. What began with the drone strike, like we started it. No, tell that to the thousands of people mourning loved ones who were killed at Soleimani's hand. Tell that to the 600-plus families of American servicemen who died from roadside attacks orchestrated by and engineered by Soleimani. No. The terrorist is the bad guy. We're the good guy. Imagine having to be on a radio show in the United States of America and have to remind people that we're the good guy and terrorism is the bad guy. They're the bad actors. Unreal. Look at Pete Buttigieg. Gotten a lot of traction. Some of these polls, Iowa, New Hampshire, I think he's like almost in the lead. So he's chugging along. Everything's going fine for him. He's got traction. People are learning about him. Thankfully, learning about his kind of typical radical left-wing ideology. But he's gaining traction. And then this incident comes along, and he literally blames the United States. Now, how do you go vote for a man for president who blames America first for terrorism and horrible actions like downing a civilian airliner, a commercial aircraft? Pete Buttigieg made the brutal mistake of tweeting out this. Innocent civilians are now dead because they were caught in the middle of an unnecessary and unwanted military tit for tat. My thoughts are with the families and loved ones of all 176 souls lost aboard this flight. Hey, Mayor Pete, let me fix it for you. You should have just tweeted, my thoughts are with the families and loved ones of all 176 souls lost aboard this flight, not blaming the United States. Unreal. First of all, they weren't flying. We had orders on a no-fly. We put Iran in a no-fly zone when all this was going on. You can't have commercial aircraft flying around when there's all this missile activity. The jet was shot down just 3 hours after Iran performed a missile attack on 2 major Iraqi bases housing American troops. The idea that Pete Buttigieg would blame us for the deaths of these innocents, it fascinates me how a lot of these Democrats seem to be hell-bent on self-sabotage. They make progress, and then they shoot themselves in the proverbial foot. And I'm not kidding you. There's a lot of Democrats who would be uncomfortable with voting for somebody who would blame America for such a horrible action, like the downing of this Ukrainian aircraft. Hey, Mayor Pete, we're not the bad guys. We didn't take down the Ukrainian aircraft. The Iranians did. We didn't start this. We're not killing innocent people with roadside bombs. We're not slaughtering innocent people intentionally. We're not embracing terror as a tactic. That's what the bad guys do. And we sure know how bad Soleimani was. Even if evidently plenty of prominent lefties don't. Well, at least we don't have anybody, at least we don't have anybody in the news media, any prominent liberal, any progressive, say on MSNBC, making like a comparison between Soleimani and, Princess Diana or Elvis Presley, right? Wait a minute. What's this?
You know, when some people die, you don't know what the impact's going to be. When Princess Diana died, for example, there was a huge emotional outpouring. Elvis Presley in our culture. It turns out that this general we killed was a beloved hero of the Iranian people, to the point where, look at the people we got pictures of now, these enormous crowds coming out. There's no American emotion in this case, but there's a hell of a lot of emotion on the other side. Should our leaders know what they're doing when they kill somebody?
I give you Chris Matthews, MSNBC. So you've got Mother Teresa, Abraham Lincoln, you've got Elvis Presley, Princess Diana, and Qasem Soleimani. That's how these nuts see the world. Even Jake Tapper on CNN, Cut 8, has to explain the monster that was Soleimani.
Soleimani's hands were drenched in both American and Iranian blood.
Iranian General Qasem Soleimani headed an organization labeled terrorist by the U.S. government, accused of being the architect behind the killings of more than 600 U.S. service members during the Iraq War, and severely injuring many others, forever changing their lives.
Planting of roadside bombs that maim and dismember their victims.
How did Soleimani do this? Bombs called explosively formed penetrators, or EFPs. The Pentagon says Soleimani gave hundreds of EFPs to Iranian militias and terrorist groups in order to attack American forces in Iraq. The EFP is a weapon former Army Sergeant Brian Anderson knows all too well.
When the explosion went off, it cut my legs and my hand off instantly. My legs were in the floorboard, my hand was in the passenger seat, and it actually spun me sideways. And as I started looking down, they tried to force my head back down to the ground, hoping I wouldn't see what had happened.
Anderson lost both his legs, his left hand, and a finger on his right hand from an EFP blast.
That copper plate liquefies and literally just melts through your armor. It's not piercing it, it's melting through it.
Though not all of Soleimani's victims were from EFP attacks, U.S. Central Command estimates nearly 200 American service members were killed by Iranian-made EFPs between 2005 and 2011, and more than 850 others were wounded.
The EFPs are really directional explosions that shoot a projectile in a single direction that achieves hypervelocity with incredible, horrible results.
As the Iraq War went on, officials were able to tie these weapons back to Iran and to Soleimani.
There is pretty good evidence tying these EFPs to the Iranians.
And that forced the U.S. to change its strategy in Iraq.
As a result of the EFPs, I can state with clarity and certainty that the MRAP was devised, and we had to adapt how we went to war against this monstrous capability.
And, at least for one victim of the brutal weapon, the death of the man responsible for his grievous injuries has given him some solace.
Finding out that they got this guy, he's like the brains, the mastermind behind all of that. And this world is a much better place without him.
You know, when some people die, you don't know what the impact's going to be. When Princess Diana died, for example, there was a huge emotional outpouring. Elvis Presley in our culture. It turns out that this...
Thanks, Chris. Chris Matthews. I don't know how you even show your face after saying something like that on national television. How would you face that young man who lost his legs and his arm? How would you say that to him? Well, Soleimani was beloved by a lot of Iranians. Just like when Princess Di passed away, when she would, Elvis, Elvis Presley, cultural icon, and Qasem Soleimani. That's Chris Matthews putting Soleimani in the category of beloved, altruistic, cultural icons. A terrorist. That's the man, as you just heard the report from Jake Tapper over on CNN, interviewing the guy with no legs, having to navigate through his own home with a motorized wheelchair with one arm because he lost his other hand. Chris Matthews compared Soleimani, the man who did that, to Princess Diana and Elvis. They're crazy on the left. They are crazy. I don't like to disparage people. I cringe sometimes at the personal attacks that people engage in. I don't want to be a part of that, and I try to do better. I really do. But for the life of me, I can't imagine Chris Matthews not being called out and forced to apologize for comparing a terrorist to Princess Di. For the life of me, I don't understand how Chris Matthews wouldn't say, man, I got kind of carried away. Believe me, people get fired for a lot less